Didn't realize that intro was there, but hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is NBA DFS with us here at DFS Army. This is the pre-lock show where we have a nice little 4-gamer on deck. No Bucks on the slate. I feel like usually when the Bucks are on the slate whenever you're here too, Madness. But how are you feeling about things? How's life treating you?
You know, life's been better, man. The Packers kicked me. I don't want to talk about the Packers.
Yeah,
the Bucks also got throttled by 45 after the game by the Brooklyn freaking Nets. So I'm ready to talk about this slate.
Football, NFL, like DFS wise, was okay. I didn't have any Lawrence, but I hit on some like low owned guys. But when it comes to like my team and stuff like that, we're just not going to talk about it. All right, good to see y'all in the chat. Cujo, Jules, Madden Dad of 3, all the goats are in here. Chad, John, Steven, Maria, good to see y'all, man. We'll jump right into it. Like I said, we have 4 games on deck tonight. We're still waiting on one piece of news that I think is pretty major, and then there's some other small things as we go game by game that we'll look at. We'll go ahead and jump right into it, though. We have the Detroit Pistons going up against the Boston Celtics. Solid 229.5 total, but lowest total on the slate. Kind of balance that out with a close spread, but most of the games on this slate have a close spread. From an injury news perspective, Detroit tonight, they are relatively healthy, but let me double check that, make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, I don't see any injury news on them. Am I missing something, Madness?
Oh, they got a full squad.
Yeah, they're healthy going up against this Boston team. Who's standing out for you here?
I think that's the big thing is Detroit's finally healthy. So, I mean, I'm really not getting a ton from Detroit outside of the wings. And I think they're mostly going to be just filler plays to make rosters work between Tobias Harris and Asor Thompson. Neither of them are all that sexy of plays, but the price tag makes sense. Like 4,800 for Tobias, we don't see that. Asor Thompson, his minutes are all over the place, and he's probably going to get Jaylen Brown assignment. So that's what they do with him. That's why they're all over the place. He gets himself into foul trouble because he has to match up against the other team's best player. So I have no issue with either of them, and I'm really not getting to like Cade all that much, Jalen Duren, all that. I normally like big men against the Celtics, but I'm just not getting to Duren. I have a stand on the center position today, so that might be driving some of that. But it's really just Tobias and Asor for me too.
Yeah. All right. We're already kind of running into my conundrum a little bit, so I'm going to fast forward a couple of games, just kind of talk through how I'm thinking about value on this slate. So Brandon Williams is 4,200. He's one of the guards for Dallas. They're missing a lot of their guards. Brandon Williams was a late Q tag today after shoot around with an Achilles injury bug he's kind of fighting through. If he plays, Brandon Williams is going to show up in a ton of my lineups, 93%. If he doesn't play, this is a Dallas team that barely has any guards. So guys like Ryan Nembhard, his floor definitely solidifies. Probably would push 30-ish minutes, you would assume. And then we have 2 value plays that would pop a bit more. Guys like Caleb Martin, season increasing usage with all these guys out. He's dirt men at 3K. And then we also have guys like Miles Kelly, who also is 3K. 2 names I don't love, but would be very... if I don't have exposure to them at Stone Men on a slate we don't have a lot of great value on, I feel like I'm setting myself up to not have a ton of upside. The problem is the start times here. This first game starts at 7. The Jazz Mavs game doesn't start until, what is that, 8:30, 9:30? 9:30, right?
Yeah, we got 8 o'clock. Central.
You kind of have to make a decision. You can play a lot of this chalk, which isn't the best, but it's not the dumbest either. Or you can kind of play it like I'm playing. I'm having a ton of exposure to Brandon Williams. If he plays, I'm okay keeping that. But it's also kind of put me in this conundrum where I'm going to limit some of my exposure to some of this early value, kind of hoping he ends up sitting and giving myself a little bit more flexibility. So because of that, I have a 40% exposure max on Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris is a very solid play with the information we have currently, but if we get better value, I don't want to have 80-90% Tobias Harris, which is what I was getting before I put a cap on him.
I like that quite a bit.
He could smash. I'm still going to have plenty of exposure to him, 40%, but just not as much as I would have without the cap. And then I'm with you. I like Asar Thompson. I have a 25% min just because he wasn't showing up at all. He's someone, again, I would like a bit less if Brandon Williams gets ruled out. I just think that would open things up and I don't have to play a lot of these lineup fillers. But we don't know if he's going to be out. So I still want to have some lineups with him showing up. So I have a 25% min there. Jalen Duren, I do like. I'm curious to know who your sneaky center play is going to be because that might get me off him a little bit. But at 7,700, he doesn't feel that pricey. And like you said, I like playing bigs against the Celtics here. The issue is just the pace that they play at is very slow. So it limits his opportunities. But I do think if they do decide to play through him offensively, he should be a focal point. And then I'm just matching the field on Cade Cunningham. I don't think you have to put a 6% min on him. I did, though, just because I like having some exposure just in case he does go off, but not a necessity. And then Duncan Robinson, I have a 5% min on just because we don't have a lot of great value, and I'm not sure we will get that great value. So he's someone who is 4,700 and plays a lot of minutes that I'm okay having some exposure to, but he's someone that you really don't have to have exposure to because he barely or rarely does anything when he's out there. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it for me. That's my rant for the day and moved on after that. Not a bad spot for these guys, just not that great. The Celtics, I'm curious to see if any of these guys stood out for you because kicking things off, they weren't popping for me. No real injury news here and a relatively tough matchup against Detroit. Do you like any of these guys?
I'm looking at them very similar to Detroit. I'm kind of in the same boat. They're not really popping for me. I did give Jaylen Brown a slight boost. He came down to earth against the Bucks, because that's what happens against the Bucks. But he's been unreal lately. So I gave him a slight boost under 10K, no issue there. But outside of him, like Peyton Pritchard being out would have done a lot, but he's playing. I don't like the matchup against this Detroit defense. There's not a lot here. Whatever I fall on from Boston, I'm fine with. I will be a little bit overweight on Jaylen Brown, but I'm kind of with you where I'm almost kind of backloading the slate and getting a lot of those last two games.
Yeah, and that always makes me a little nervous, but I would be more nervous if these guys, this might not make sense at first, but I'll explain it. I would be more nervous about not having exposure to these guys if they were lower owned, just because that make me feel like I'm missing out on just like some low owned value plays or just guys who aren't getting as much ownership as they should. But this game has a decent amount of ownership, like Jaylen Brown at 15%, Derek White at 18%, almost 20, Peyton Pritchard at 25%, Kata at 20%. Like these aren't sneaky low owned guys. They're getting a good amount of ownership. So I don't really feel like I'm missing out by not having exposure. Of course, if they pop off, then yeah, I'm literally missing out. But at this point, I'm just not going to force exposure to Boston. I will put a 20% min on Jaylen Brown, though. I like playing guys after they had a down game. Even if it is a tough matchup, he's not pushing 10K or anything like that. So we've seen him. Actually, let me double check that right quick. Let's see. Jaylen Brown. Yeah, we have seen him put up 60 points against this Detroit team literally a couple weeks ago. So not unheard of or not something we haven't seen before. Let's see. Chad, man, you need help. Flip. Yeah, we're back. There's more than 2 games on a slate. We'll be here. Dave, good to see you as well, man. I thought about taking shots on White and Pritchard because they're not priced terribly. Did you lean towards one versus the other here?
Probably just Pritchard because he's easier to get to, just from a price perspective. But I just struggle with the size that Detroit's going to throw at this backcourt. And like you said, they're not low owned either. So it's
yeah.
Do they kill you at that price tag? I mean, if they drop 50, yeah, they're going to kill us. But
the one guy who has similar upside, at least to me, as like a Pritchard or a Kata is Jordan Walsh, and he's had some recent success. I know he did decently well against the Bucks, almost put up 40 fantasy points. He's been relatively consistent. He'll have some stinkers every once in a blue moon where they don't play him a ton of minutes, like against Toronto on the 7th and the Knicks on the 2nd. But outside of that, he's had 30 plus upside, which will be him hitting 6x if he can do that again in this spot. I think that's going to be
handsy.
He is. Foul trouble is a weakness of his, and especially in like a physical matchup. I think that's a good point. Foul trouble is scary, but I'll put a 5% min on him just to have exposure to someone who has upside who's low owned. So
nice Tobias pivot, I think.
Yeah, like a solid pivot, like 200 more than Tobias, but yeah, like we both said at this point, it's just hard to take these early games too seriously about that Mavs news. He does play both sides pretty well. Pritchard is playing, which kind of ruined things for Boston tonight. Hey, Mario, we're on the same page. All right. Next up, we have the Toronto Raptors going up against the Miami Heat. Nice game here. The interesting thing about Miami is their defensive rating is actually top 10, but they play at such a fast pace that they are also top 10 in just points allowed. So they're a good defense. They just play so fast that teams can still score on them. For Toronto, they still have RJ Barrett out. It's hard to pick a favorite here, though. Who are you putting your hat on, man?
I think it's going to come down to price again. I think Quickly is going to be my favorite just because he's easiest to get to, but I do like this spot. So Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickly, I'll get exposure to the like you said, the matchup. Miami has flipped their style of play essentially overnight, and they're running and gunning. They're the fastest team in the league, and I think that sets up well pretty nicely for Barnes, Quickly, and Ingram. I have a tough time trusting Brandon Ingram. The 8K price tag is probably right.
Yeah.
But he hasn't paid that. So he dropped 50 last time out. Prior to that, last time he hit 40 fantasy points was November 26th. So I just have a tough time trusting him. If you want to play him, I have no issue with that. Again, the matchup is great. And then Scotty Barnes, fast pace. I love playing him in fast pace matchup. He can stuff the stat sheet, rebounds, assists, steals, all that jazz. I do like the ceiling on Barnes quite a bit, but I think I'll get the most of Quickly.
Yeah. Any interest in good old Jakob?
I always like Jakob, but he doesn't fit what I want to do with the centers.
Oh, see, I thought this might be where you were going with center. I can already tell I'm going to be terrified of whoever you're picking. All right. For me on this slate, I see things pretty much the same way as you. I'm going to do a run right quick to make sure all these guys show up still with these men's. But yeah, Chad, you're right. Madness is speaking the truth all day, every day. I like having exposure to Scotty, but he's not someone I want to make a priority just because I feel like he's priced appropriately. I feel the exact same way about Brandon Ingram, but I trust his upside a little bit less. So I'm not even trying to match the field. I just like having some exposure. So I have a 15% min on him. Quickly is also my favorite here. 7K, 25% min there. I'll be slightly over the field. And then Jakob Poeltl, I like being over the field on. I have a 20% min on him right now, which would make him a leverage play. Thinking about making it a 15% min. But my thought process here is I think Jalen Duren and Jakob Poeltl probably have are two guys who have relatively soft matchups here at the center position. I think AD has the softest matchup, but those are just two bigs I want exposure to on this slate. And yeah, it looks like everyone's still showing up, even with those men's in place. Yeah, good. So I don't have too many men's yet, but this is something I'm always keeping a close eye out on just to make sure everyone's showing up the way I want them to. All right. Other side of this game, we have the Miami Heat going up against the Raptors, and this team is getting healthy, which is never a fun thing from like a DFS perspective, but Pelle Larsson is out. So that makes things a little bit more interesting than it would have been, if they were 100% healthy. But this is still a pretty deep team. They play everybody. Any of these guys stand out for you?
Less so from Miami. I want to like Bam, but he always screws me for whatever reason. A sub 8K price tag, it's hard to ignore. I do like him quite a bit. I think Norman Powell is going to be the guy I get the most exposure to. You're getting more production out of Powell at a cheaper price point than Tyler Hero. Hero's only paid off his price tag one time. Yeah, one time. It's a shortened season for him. A handful of games for Hero. So it's nothing too egregious. He will pop off at some point. Could be tonight now that I just shit talked him, but I don't get a ton of Hero. He's gonna play minutes, he's gonna look fine. If you land on him, I'm not gonna talk you out of it. But I do like Norman Powell probably the most on this team. Andrew Wiggins, if you land on him, he's kind of come down to earth a little bit as of late. No, Pell Arson probably helps. He's gonna play a bunch of minutes, so Andrew Wiggins fine. But I do like Norman Powell the most. Shooting guard, small forward eligibility helps the roster build quite a bit by, kind of flipping those positions around. And then Bam, I'm kind of torn on. I want to like him, but how many times do you go back to the well and get shocked? So I don't know. Bam is fine. Like I said, I've got other centers I like.
Yeah, I mean, that list is getting shorter and shorter as we go through these games. I don't feel overly passionate about the Heat in this spot. I have 15% men's on Bam, Hero, and Norman Powell. But if I do more runs and things aren't in the players I really feel more strongly about in these next two games aren't showing up, these are going to be some of the first few men's I'm willing to cut. So I like having exposure to these guys because I think they have upside in it's not supposed to be as competitive, but still a pretty decent total at 235.5. But again, they don't really move the needle for me too much. And primarily it's because of that deep rotation.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next up, we have Dallas. This is where things get interesting. We already talked about some of the injury concerns. Anthony Davis is questionable. Daniel Gafford is questionable, but they both were at shoot around earlier today, so makes it a little bit more likely they'll play tonight. And then Brandon Williams, post shoot around, we got the Q tag on him dealing with that Achilles injury. All pretty big Q tags in my book, but how are you kind of looking at things here?
Yeah, now the slate starts to get interesting, starting with this game. And current state, I do have Brandon Williams as a core play just because of the price tag. If he does get ruled out, we have flexibility to move him around. Just make sure he's in that guard spot if you can. It gives you more positionality to play with. But I do like Brandon Williams quite a bit, mostly because of the price tag. And let's be honest, he's been good. So give me Brandon Williams, assuming he plays. That's news you have to watch out for if you do have him as a core play. So stick around the Discord. We'll have the news for you. Anthony Davis, I do like quite a bit. Sub 10K. The matchup is beautiful against this Utah team without Yusuf Nurkic. I don't see the likes of Kyle Filipowski being able to stop him. Coming off a big game last time out against a similarly bad Brooklyn team. So Davis looks pretty good to me. Nembhard is going to look Nembhard's going to be a core if Brandon Williams is out. So if you can navigate a way to save $300 salary in your lineups, it's an easy pivot to get off Brandon Williams to Ryan Nembhard if Williams is out. But I like Nembhard too. I mean, I think you can play them together. I have no issue with that at their price tags in a gorgeous matchup against the Jazz. And I did slap a love on Cooper Flag. He has been much better lately, and I like the matchup. So like the spot here for Cooper Flag, over 40 fantasy points in 4 of his last 7 games. So like the spot there. And then fine with whatever I land on with Najee Marshall and PJ Washington. Neither of them are going to be priorities by any means, but I like this Dallas team quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm with you here, man. When you look at a player's game log, very often you'll see like, oh, this guy had like a 60, 70 point performance. I wonder who that was against. It's almost always against Utah. Like the old reliable, someone here will pop off. That's just a guarantee. The real question comes down to who is it going to be. It starts off of AD. He leads the usage rate for this team. He is the star player here. Should be able to get anything he wants from an offensive perspective. And also when it comes to rebounding, it shouldn't be too hard for him against the Filipowski, like you mentioned, or really anybody on the Jazz team. So I have a 30% min on him. He's the stud I'm looking to make a priority on this slate. So I have that 30% tag, 5% edge over the field. So I'll keep that. Cooper Flag will be a leverage play for me tonight on this slate. Like you said, his form has been good, but I've been playing Coop for a while now. I just like his upside at low ownership. And once again, he's relatively low owned in the highest game total on the slate. So that's going to be a leverage play for me every single time. Then I have a 15% min on PJ Washington, not because I love him, but because I just like having him in the mix. It's a good game environment. Just want some exposure there. Najee, I like a bit more than PJ. There's a clear salary difference, but I also just like that he does a lot for this team, and they should utilize him in a soft matchup. So 25% min there. Ryan Nimbard, I liked even before the Brandon Williams news. So I have a 40% min on him, just making sure he shows up a good bit. But yeah, I'm just I'm gonna be significantly over the field no matter how news breaks. But I like already being over the field pre-news break if it does go the way I want it to, because people are gonna struggle finding a way to get him into lineups. And then I agree with you, Brandon Williams is a core play for me as well. He's showing up in 85% of lineups right now. Let's see. I don't know if he's in the util spot, he's in the guard spot, and a lot of these lineups he is showing up there, but you can see there's still a few lineups where he's showing up at the point guard position, and that will make things a little bit more complicated for me. Thankfully, because I have so much Ryan Nimbard exposure and Brandon Williams exposure, it shouldn't be too hard. Like those two in one lineup, I can move Ryan Nimbard to the point guard spot if that's where Brandon Williams is, and then utilize my guard spot or my util spot to get in some of the other options that become more viable if Williams gets ruled out. So having a lot of exposure to both here gives me the flexibility I want. If Brandon Williams plays, looks a little bit tighter, but it's still a spot I don't hate in a soft matchup here. So yeah, really like Dallas tonight. They're a team I think we both just like having a lot of exposure to. Jazz side is still interesting, but a little bit less straightforward in the fact that we probably don't like everybody. But for Dallas or for Utah, we have Yusuf Nurkic out, which is why Filipowski should start at center. Once again, you'll see a little bit of a boost to guys like Kevin Love, too, which is a name we don't tout too often. And then outside of that, the other injuries have been in place for a while now. Who do you like here?
Yeah, I think all your lineups, not all of them, but if you're playing cash, you're starting your lineups with Kyle Filipowski tonight. Yep. Like you said, no Yusuf Nurkic tonight. Expect Filipowski to start. He has the power forward eligibility too, which makes it easy to get to him. 5,400. I just think you eat the chalk with Filipowski. He's gonna look good. I do have so Kevin Love. This isn't the center play that I am almost forcing, but he makes it work with the 3,900 price tag. He's coming off a huge game last time out, and he's always been a guy that can be a point per minute monster. Even if he's just playing 20 minutes, which is what I expect from him tonight, he can get there without Nurkic. Expect him to see some backup 5 run. He's a good rebounder. So I do like Kevin Love as a value play. Ace Bailey. I can't quit Ace Bailey for some reason. He's been very average, but I don't see how he doesn't play 30, 35 minutes tonight in a somewhat decent matchup. So I do like Ace Bailey. The price it's fine. It's not going to hinder your lineup by any means. Keontae George, man. Good luck. He massive game last time out with 63 DraftKings points. He has over 53 DraftKings points in 2 of his last 4. Those other 2, he is under 25 DraftKings points. So flip a coin. You don't know what you're getting out of Keontae George. He's generally pretty good, but man, the volatility as of late has been harsh. So I do like him, and the price tag is kind of where it has been. It hasn't really moved. And then Lauri Markkanen, he's fine. He gets a bunch of usage on this team, but we just haven't seen a ceiling from him. I think we kind of know what we're getting out of him at this point. So if I land on him, he's fine. I don't think he tanks your lineups. I don't think he wins you a lineup. So Really, Filipowski in a big way. He's a core play. Kevin Love, I'm getting more than the field. Ace Bailey, I'm getting a little bit more than the field. He does have a pretty heavy ownership number already, so not going crazy there. And then I'm good with whatever Keontae George and Lauri Markkanen I fall on. Last guy is Isaiah Collier, just because of the 3,200 price tag. He got 24 minutes last time out. Fine punt option.
Yeah, it's weird. The more we talk about Utah, the less and less I like them. And we can pull up some stuff here. So let me pull up the sim model here. So we'll start with Ace Bailey. I put a 50% exposure max. I'm capping him because when I didn't, he was showing up in 89% of my lineups, which just felt a little crazy for a guy that first hasn't really shown us a lot of upside so far this season. But secondly, I just think there's other viable value options. And I kind of came to that conclusion looking at the sim model. Here we have a 7.29% chance of him hitting 7x value, which is pretty good. Not bad. That's why I'm okay being over the field on him. But then we have guys like Ryan Nimbard who exceeds that. We have guys like Brandon Williams who exceeds that. Those are guys I want to make a priority. Kevin Love looks really good because he's so cheap in a value play. I just don't need 80 to 90% of a guy like Ace Bailey, who I don't love, when I just think there's other viable options here. So that was kind of my thought process behind capping him. I do think at 4,700 in a matchup I don't hate. I don't love picking on Dallas. They have a pretty solid defense, but it's not something to be afraid of. I'm okay having a lot of him. So he's showing up in 47% of my lineups. And then when it comes to guys I do like, Lauri Markkanen and Keontae George, I wish the matchup was a bit softer, but it's still a high total game. I'm always going to force exposure to spots like this, so I have a 20% min on both of them. I thought about going a little over, but couldn't really find a great reason for it. I have a 20% min on Kevin Love. I'm going to increase that to 25%. Again, if we get other value, I do think this will like deprioritize Kevin Love for me, but I still like having exposure. I want to be over the field on Kevin Love at 3,900 with the injuries they have. Isaiah Collier, his ownership just went up, so I'll put a 20% min on him. Once again, if we get that news from the Dallas side that I would like to see, he's someone that would be a bit lower on the pedestal for me, but with the news we have now, I like having another value guard in the mix who has similar upside. Tattoo, what's up, man? Good to see you. Well. Jules Keontae has one of the best ceilings today, for sure. I don't think you'll be hard pressed to have someone argue you on that. The question is how consistently he hits that ceiling. And I like having exposure. It's just, as you mentioned, Matt, it's a little hard to trust them. You can't really trust Keontae's ceiling. All right. Next up, we have the Rockets going up against the Nuggets. For the Rockets tonight, we have someone potentially coming back. Terry Eason listed as questionable. If he returns into the starting lineup, that's just makes things a little bit worse for guys like Jabari. Really, I think it primarily impacts Jabari, at least coming top of mind for me. Anyone stand out in this game for you?
First off, I don't understand the power forward eligibility on Şengün. It makes no sense. They did the same thing with Miles Turner yesterday. They're just not power forwards.
Sometimes we just have to be thankful. We just have to be thankful and say,
right, I'm going to take it because this is where we get weird. I'm almost kind of forcing a Şengün Jokic stack tonight. I love the spot. So let me rephrase that. I don't love the spot defensively, but the total is still there at 237. It's the second highest total on the slate, and it's a 1-point game, a 1-point spread. These two teams don't see 1-point spreads often. They are more often than not massive favorites, and it impacts those minutes. So guys like Şengün and Jokic, when they get the minutes, I want to target them from a point per minute perspective, and that's what I'm doing tonight. Şengün 53 plus DraftKings points in 3 straight games. He did struggle against Denver last time they played, but I'm throwing it out the window because I love the spot. So give me Şengün in a big way. He is a core play for me tonight. Outside of him, not a whole lot. I do think the Tari Eason news is kind of annoying. He's probably going to be limited in a pretty heavy fashion, but it throws things off with like Jabari and Reed Shepard and Steven Adams. So I'm not playing him anyway, but outside of Şengün, which I'm going to have in a big way, I don't have a ton of this team.
Yeah, I imagine the field on Şengün, but I'm not going to lie, the matchup terrifies the living hell out of me. I don't love picking on Jokic with bigs who are similar to him in ways, but I like the price tag at 9,300, and I like the game environment, even if it is a difficult matchup, second highest total on the slate, close spread. Like, those are things I typically like to target, even with star players. So I get it. So I'm just putting a 20% min there. And then KD, his ownership is rising. So now I need to think about what I actually want to do with him. 10% was easy to match, but as we get closer to 15%, it feels like a lot to ask for an 8,500 KD. Let me do some quick math here. For KD to win a tournament for me tonight, we'll say at least 6x-ish. Maybe 5 would do it, but I'll put 6. We need 49 fantasy points from him. He did that against Phoenix. He's done that against Utah. He did it against Orlando on the 16th of November. Last time against Denver, he only had 30 fantasy points, though. He struggled pretty well. That entire team struggled, though. I'll put a 15% min on him just because we know the upside can be there, and if they treat it like a playoff game, I want to have exposure to it, but I don't love it. So 20% min on Şengün, 15% min on KD, and no one from this game, or at least from the Rockets side of it, will show up by themselves outside of that. Are we missing out? I think Amin's price tag is just too hard to look at right now. Is that it?
Yeah. I don't see how you play him, and I don't see how you don't play him and he kills you. Like, does he go out and drop 50? Maybe, but it's a 1 to 3 percentile outcome. Like, I just don't see it with that price tag.
Yeah, it's gonna be a pass for me. Wagwan, Kevin, good to see you, man. Good to see you. Go-To's Move Gaming said, "Where's the core?" My core today is going to be pretty straightforward. It's just Filipowski and Brandon Williams, and then the rest we'll have to see based off of news. Nuggets side of this game, they are also pretty healthy, which is becoming a trend here. Julian Strawther is questionable, so he might be coming back, which just makes things a little bit grosser. But tough matchup, but I think we still probably want exposure to some of these Nuggets. I know it sounds like Jokic is just someone you really like. What's your thought process behind it?
Yeah, I'll have a bunch of Jokic. Anytime we can get Jokic, what is he, 14% projected own on a 4-game slate with, what is this floor now? 55? Like, if I can just lock in 55 fantasy points from a guy, yes, you're paying for it. And if he hits 55, you're probably not winning. But like I said, I love the matchup. The matchup is terrible, but it's a 1-point spread, and he's going to play 35 plus minutes. As a guy who's about a 2-point per minute guy, you're looking at 70 fantasy points. Yes, in a vacuum, that's fine. But I like stacking him up with Şengün quite a bit, and he's going to be a guy I do like because we do have the value today. We got Filipowski, not necessarily a under 4K value that we normally like to target, but guys like Kevin Love, guys like Isaiah Collier, whatever happens with the Brandon Williams news, Brandon Williams in itself is a nice value play. So I think we have the value to get to him. I'll have a bunch of Jokic. Him and Şengün are in my core. Like I said, I'm almost kind of forcing that. I'll call it a mini stack. We don't really stack in basketball, but I like the spot there for Jokic. And outside of him, it's a whole lot of not much. Let me just confirm that. Yeah, I'm not getting Jonas Valanciunas in 1%. Oh, here we go. Tim Hardaway. Yeah, Tim Hardaway. Yeah, nothing outside of Jokic really for me.
Yeah, you can tell there's not like a ton of value options when guys like Joe Val and Tim Hardaway start to pop a little bit. I saw them showing up a little bit too, and just given their price tags, I kind of understood it, but not someone, like you said, I'm trying to make a priority. I really like Jokic in this spot. Like you said, we've actually seen him score like 60, 67, close to 70 fantasy points in the last matchup against the Rockets. Jokic is pretty much matchup proof. Is really just how aggressive is he going to be that day. And in closer matchups, more likely for us to see it. So he's going to be a leverage play for me today. It's really just Cooper Flag and Jokic are the two priorities I'm going to have on this slate. And then Jamal Murray, similar, honestly, to a lot of these guys. He's been better this season. He's also better in closer matchups. Matchup can kind of go out the window with Murray. He's someone that does, like most players, thrive in soft matchups, but you really kind of see his ceiling go up another level when Jokic just kind of gives him the ball a bit more. So those are two players I want to make a priority. And then Peyton Watson, just another value guy I like having in the mix. Doesn't really jump off the sheet. Let's look at the sim right quick. 5,700. Peyton Watson. Yeah, sim doesn't love him a ton either. He likes Kata a bit more. I might have to look back at Kata. I might be missing something there. He likes Pritchard, which is kind of why I thought about him. Yeah, I'm going to lower this to 5%. And I think I missed out on Kata. And so where's his ownership? 20%. No, screw that. That's why I didn't do it. Pritchard, 25. Yeah, okay. Never mind. I'm understanding why I did things the way I did now. I'm okay for 10% min on Watson. Just kind of getting different in those chalkier spots with close but lower upside to some of the Boston guys. And Cam Johnson just has been bad.
Yeah.
Really bad.
Yeah. I think he's a better basketball player than he is a DFS player.
Yeah, but I mean, his shooting percentage hasn't been great either. Like, I think you're right on defense. He's a solid forward you can put out there, but and he probably doesn't complain when it comes to him not scoring a ton because he knows that shot is just not where it needs to be right now. Yeah, Jokic does have a tough matchup, at least on paper, but it's just one he's done well against before, so I'm not overly concerned about it. And I think that's kind of why his ownership is lower than it should be, at least in my opinion.
So, yeah, people look at matchups with Jokic and guys like Giannis and Luka, and I just don't care.
Yeah,
like they're gonna put up points.
Yeah, and especially like a 4-game slate where there's not a stud outside of AD, who we're still a little worried about because we just don't know if his minutes are going to be there. He's a glass cannon. Outside of AD, there's just not a stud on this slate who's in a great matchup. So that's why I'm okay taking a shot on a guy like Jokic and having some exposure to Şengün, stuff like that. Let's see. So there's still some changes I want to make to some of these lineups. Like, there's a few guys who aren't showing up the way I want them to. So, like, Jokic is only showing up in 20% of my lineups, which is above the field, but not where I want it to be. I don't see Jamal Murray. So, yeah, he's only showing up in 3% of my lineup. So, I'm, like, post-show going to lower some of the shots on some of the Heat guys just to kind of make sure I have exposure to the guys in the late games, especially when it comes to like the Mavs and the Nuggets, who I'm looking to prioritize on the slate. Like those are the guys I'm keeping sacred. The other games, I'm just having exposure to have exposure because they're seeing ownership and I think they have upside, but they're not going to be focal points. Madness, anything else you want to kind of talk about before we kind of wrap up here?
Now stick around in Discord because that Brandon Williams news is going to change the slate.
Yeah, and if you're not a DFS Army member and if you're not in the Discord, click the link in the description. Use promo code MADNESS for a 10% discount. MADDNESS. Had to think a little bit harder than I should have on that one. And yeah, man, we'll make sure you're good to go. Feel free to ask questions there. But I wish you all good luck tonight. No show tomorrow. No show on Wednesday. 1 and 2 gamers. I didn't make the schedule, so don't flip out on me. But we'll have more games here soon. I think on Thursday we have like 12 games or something. So
awesome.
You know, we'll be around. All right. Good luck, y'all. Helmets up. Peace out.